Alright, that's the best I got. You're literally hanging off of my window. And, you know, the little window piece that opens the window. It's one of those little crankers. I can't move you. You took a second. Bone broth of the month. We also have the realignment episode 89 with Eric Weinstein. Reckoning with Capital Chaos and How to Save America. I believe it's 3 versions of beets: purple, white, red, white, zebra kind, and then solid red, red, white stripe, purple bacterias. Carrots, turnip, watermelon, turnip, parsnip, daikon, black beet, watermelon, onions, celery, broccoli, asparagus, green beans, Brussels sprouts. Good enough? Yeah. We go big. This is not big enough. Nowhere near.
You're willing to engage in madness. And keep in mind that the one thing we know about LARPing is that the body count in Portland is so low because this is an agreed upon theatrical battle.
Quick thing, Eric. I have to ask you this. I'm not asking you this in the woke sense, so let me finish the thought here. I'm from Oregon, as I said before, so I only mostly know white people. So everyone I knew growing up who believed in chemtrails was white. So I get your point about white black people. Why do white people believe in chemtrails?
Oh, that's a little bit different. The Pacific Northwest, because of its history of labor activism and communism, in part shares a lot of the history of Black America. So one of the reasons that people see me as conspiratorial is because I come from a progressive family. And so when the government has spied on your family, when it's, we locked Paul Robeson in the country by taking his passport. We locked Charlie Chaplin out of the country so that he left and we would let him back in to go to his house. Once you've been the target of the United States government, you realize that the mainstream belief of, oh, that's all science fiction, you go to too many movies, is complete nonsense. So I would say everybody who shares the history of just being lied to and having their history completely denied. Remember, the Weather Underground was a response to the assassination of Fred Hampton at the hands of the Cook County Sheriff's Department as directed by the Federal Bureau of Investigation for crime of introducing the Rainbow Coalition to decrease black fighting between gangs to create a political movement. We are that crazy. And because we are that crazy, everyone who's plugged into the Howard Zinn version of our history is not quite so sure that all elections are free and fair. You know, if you take Operation Ajax in Iran, we clearly know how to turn over a gun.
That was the overthrow of the Shah, right? Yeah, most of it. So, but too many operations. It's hard to get.
Condor in Chile.
Yeah.
The issue is, if you don't know your history, maybe all this sounds like conspiracy. If you do know your history, you know what we're capable of, and there's no question that we're capable of throwing an election. And then now the problem is, okay, he said that. It's a little bit like saying, I don't believe vaccines are 100% safe. Now, that's clearly true. Vaccines are not 100% safe. However, there's an expectation that nobody will speak reality if you're part of, if you're like me and you have advanced degrees in something, you're supposed to deny reality the way everybody denies reality. We're now at the point public, so many members of the public have caught on to the fact that the national official narrative is total nonsense, and they're willing to believe anything.
This is something I really want to focus on here, and I want to kind of turn it into where we are today. It's something I've talked a lot about on Rising, and we'll talk about tomorrow, is about impeachment. And a point that I've been trying to make, and I'm curious to get both your guys' thoughts on this, is that in the context of impeachment, the way I look at it in impeachment is you have to have, this is essentially the most extreme act that you can go through as a democratic society, invalidating the election previous, including the democratically elected president of the United States. And I looked at the recent polling to the extent that we have, I don't know if I can believe it, but what we have is this: 56% of polls, 56% of Americans say that Trump should go. And you could say that's a lot, but to me, I'm like, wait, so there's still a sizable majority in the country that says that he shouldn't go. And then you look within Republicans, and you say 73% or whatever still approve of Trump, still, think of the job he's doing. Some have even, justify the Capitol violence. And I'm not saying any of this with a qualitative judgment. What I'm saying is if your goal is to unite the country, if your goal is to move on, which is what Joe Biden and many of the cases for him was, this seems to be the worst possible thing that you could do. But then, which other step? To impeach Trump either right now or to impeach and bar him from office in the future. Because the way I look at it is that would be one of the single biggest instances of trying to basically not even invalidate votes, but to tell a sizable minority of this country, 44% or so, that the person that you have immense faith in is no longer allowed to represent you as president. And it seems to me that it could be. I'm not saying it's intentional, but it's a cover for not wanting to address the reasons that. And this is what I said today too: is look, if you're Joe Biden or the Democrats, you want to make sure that Trump is never elected again. You don't have to impeach him. Distribute a vaccine properly, and pass $2,000 checks for all Americans. You will win the presidency. It's actually not that hard. I want to get your thoughts on impeachment, about the legitimacy of democracy. No, it's fine. If you disagree, it's fine. Because my goal, what I know is that you're trying to operate in good faith towards trying to be a more harmonious country. And it seems to me that a lot of impeachment talk is about punishment. It's about penalizing. And I have to try and take Trump out of it because I find what he did so odious and all of that. But we still have to live with many of the people who voted for him in this country. We have to channel those concerns in one weapon.
We don't have to live with them. They're us.
Yes,
those are my
exactly.
brothers. Those are my brothers and sisters. And let me tell you something. You guys have kids?
No, we don't.
Okay. Let me imagine you're my kids. Okay. You get involved in a cult. You think I'm not coming back and I'm coming in for you to get you the hell out of there? You think that I'm just gonna, dismiss you and say, oh my God, they're now part of a cult and they're beyond the pale and I just have to cut ties and I'm gonna disavow them? Yeah, well, fuck that shit. Okay, MAGA is our responsibility. Those are my brothers and sisters. I'm not running away from them. I'm not interested in that. I'm not demonizing them. But a cult it is. I'm not going to say it's a cult. I'm also not going to say it's a cult. It's a cult. Cults are incredibly powerful. And some of us have been noticing that there is no class of break glass in case of emergency people in our country. This is sometimes what a monarchy is supposed to do. I was hanging out with a royal family in Europe, which will remain nameless, and
There's like 3, so someone can figure this out. No, there's more than that.
there's more than that.
Yeah.
And a prince was saying, well, you have to appreciate we're in a very bad situation. There's no justification for monarchy anymore, so we're really sort of hanging on by a thread. And I said, look, I'm anti-monarchy, but you should at least be able to steelman the case. He said, well, what do we do? What's our function? And I said, you've had 75 years of peace since the end of World War II. How often do you use a fire extinguisher? Almost never. Does that mean that you just get rid of the fire extinguisher because you haven't used it. No, you check in on it. And when you need it, it's there. And what's the purpose? You're supposed to walk the rubble when the bombs are falling, on a city, for example. You're supposed to give people something to rally around. And I don't believe in doing that through monarchy because I'm an American. We reject that. But I do believe in Buzz Aldrin, right? I do believe that there are people who are apart, Like when Killer Mike spoke in Atlanta, he seemed to be apart. I don't know who that guy is. I'm not really a hip-hop fan, but I was really impressed with him. And if in particular, I am a huge fan of Black oratory. The skill involved in Black oratory coming out of the Black church, it's its own thing, and it's one of the things I'm proudest of as an American. There are times when you have to address a mob or a crowd. There are times you have to do what James Brown did after Martin Luther King. We have got a situation in which we don't believe in seating anybody who has those characteristics in the chairs. The reason that I want to do Rising more than I want to talk to the two of you is not anything against Marshall. It's about the optics. Rising looks like adulthood. It looks like it comes from the institutional complex. And the optics is the adults. The institutions don't listen to anyone outside of a closed system. And effectively, they put up this barrier where they call everything alt-right or far-right that doesn't have the right characteristics, which is on the tape. And right now, the important thing is to seat the people who have tried to call both balls and strikes for 4 years, torn apart, had their families torn apart. Look, I work for a guy who supported Donald Trump in 2016. Was noticeably absent in 2020.
Oh.
My entire ability to speak freely comes from my good friend's money. And the fact that I disagree with him, and I love him so much, that I trust that he will not sever me because I'm undermining his political. My brother, for example, is ejected from Evergreen State College because he was willing to stand against racism, even if it comes from blacks. Yeah. The number of people who tried to call balls and strikes for 4 years is tiny. And right now, what I want to do is I want to take Brian Williams and Mara Gay, and I want to give them a huge vacation. Let them go to Tulum. And I want to seat different people in those chairs. If those people can't figure out even how to add and subtract, speaking of their crazy idea that Bloomberg could have given everyone $1 million with his campaign investment, there is no commentary class that's competent that sits in those chairs. The problem, as I've said, is that the system isn't broken. It's fixed. And until you actually seat your critics, until you do what we used to do, which is to seat the Noam Chomskys at a place like MIT, so that the conscience of MIT lives inside of MIT.
Yeah, I'll come this way.
Ombudsman can say that the paper is out of control.
For you guys.
At the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. When you don't seat your critics inside of the organization, you are on the road to self-extinguishing. Right now, the most important thing is to realize that we don't have time to put everything on the blockchain to build new institutions. The most important thing right now is to get the tiny number of people who've been calling balls and strikes, who were born after 1964, into those effing chairs to tell the system, you're old, it's over, you're done. You people from the 40s, you're failed. You don't understand where you are, you're not technically competent, you don't have the country's best interests at heart, you've sold us to China, you've created incredibly deep fake stories about the intelligence complex taking over the world, or something about the desire to destroy America. All of these crazy stories that we've heard around Wokistan and Megastan
Soft.
have to go. And they are responsive to each other. Woke creates MAGA, MAGA creates woke. You know, it's the snake is eating its own
I'm gonna
tail.
put
The
this.
whole way we get out of this is that we put the people we trust more. Let me give you a very simple rubric. Take anyone where the official description of that person is maximally divergent from the actual description of that person. Like Ben Shapiro is a Nazi. Okay, an Orthodox Jewish Nazi. That's pretty interesting. You know, Sam Harris is an incredible Islamophobe. No, he isn't. I know Sam. He's my good friend. All of these things. Brett Weinstein is, you know, the far right. Seek the people where the description of them inside the gated institutional narrative of the gin is maximally divergent from the reality. Because that's the place that the system showed you. Let the system tell you who it fears. And seek the people in the chairs who are feared most, who are maximally misportrayed. And then you'll have a solution.
Which is that, and for the record, Eric is coming on Rising, so don't everybody worry about that. He will be there, and it's going to be great. But here's the problem. Democrats, and Democratic primary voters in particular, who select our possible next president, they love Brian Williams. And they love MSNBC and the MSNBC lineup. And Republican, what they do, they trust them. If you say the same, see, I don't know.
So I wouldn't say, sorry, yeah,
go ahead.
A certain very influential and powerful part of the Democratic Party, people who live in Northern Virginia, people who live in the Long Island suburbs, the Park Avenue reference and everything, they certainly do like those
Long Island suburbs. The Hamptons.
We're reaching the limits of
our conventional wisdom. But I want to make just 1 second. I want to make this point too, because the Republican Party does deeply trust Fox as well, and so to the point of the media actors who, you know, I would love nothing more than to be seated, but I can tell you, I go on Fox. There is a character that they want me to play. Increasingly, I have been doing a lot less because they will ask me to come on. And all they want me to do is smack the left, or talk about culture war issues. And I'm like, no, because this is ripping the country in half. And I've increasingly turned down a lot of appearances unless it's to talk about economic
You know what the
system.
solution is for going on Fox?
Go ahead.
And I've done this like the last time.
Yeah.
It was probably Greg Gutfeld. I said, if I come on Fox, I'm telling your audience, like you, Fox, is a propaganda network. And he said, sure. I said, we got
That's great. Yeah, that's good.
No, but I'm telling you, this is part of the deal, which is what's going on is not quite correct. So let's take Long Island. The Hamptons loves Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
The Kamala Harris that is loved in the Hamptons is not the Kamala Harris that we see. In other words, it's like a developer looking at a computer program. They see the code, we see the binary. We see the finished product without being able to see what's actually going on. They specifically love Kamala Harris because they know who she is and what she's going to do for them. And we see the front end, which is what she's going to do to us. So, first of all, no, I don't think that they love Brian Williams. And if you think that they love Brian Williams, please allow
No
me to
bueno.
go on opposite Brian Williams.
Hard veggies. Soft veggies. 4 hours out. Maybe 6 hours and 3. Yeah, probably 6 and 3. Or 4 and 2. You know. The bones will probably go for a good 12 to 16, maybe even 24. Tomorrow. Yeah. That's it. It's a big move when this guy gets set. We'll cut those. Perhaps we'll cut those. I don't know where I'm putting that.
Later.